highly requested video. You guys have been telling me to watch this video since it came out 3 years ago, and we're doing it today. The history of Rainbow Six. I'm excited. Let's go. Click subscribe. Click subscribe.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Nick930, and today I wanted to share with you the complete history of Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six.
Okay.
Go, move it! Fire! Tango down!
Siege actually used to look like that? Siege actually... Watch them repel!
Go, move it! Fire! Tango down!
Bro, what?
Taking cover. Man down!
Bro, this video's like a movie.
Rainbow Six is a first-person tactical shooter franchise.
Yes!
Created by Red Storm Entertainment,
What?
published by Ubisoft, and endorsed by the late American novelist Tom
Tom
Clancy.
Clancy!
In each game, players control members of Team Rainbow, an international anti-terrorist unit, whose sophisticated skills and precision allow them to effectively clear out fortified positions and secure sensitive objectives. The series is often recognized for its role in establishing the tactical shooter genre, and despite a few missteps throughout the course of the past 20-some years, it still remains one of the most popular tactical shooter games available to this day. So, how exactly did the Rainbow Six property manage to retain its popularity? And what can we expect from the series in the future? Well, to answer that, let's take a look at how the series began back in the late 90s. In 1984, a Baltimore novelist by the name of Tom Clancy released his first book, The Hunt for Red October. It was met with overwhelming praise, and even received endorsement from US President Ronald Reagan, greatly boosting the 36-year-old writer's credibility. Following this unexpected success, Clancy went on to write several more books, all sharing similar literary themes, mainly involving highly trained American special forces thwarting international terrorism. As his influence grew, Clancy sought to expand his legacy outside the pages of his books, and established Clancy Interactive Entertainment. He then coordinated with a small game development studio from North Carolina to create an interactive experience based on his latest submarine warfare novel, SSN. The game helped convince Clancy that the video game medium was worth investing in, and a day after its release, the two studios were consolidated into Red Storm Entertainment. They released a few small games, including a turn-based strategy title based on Clancy's book Politica, and a 3D RTS game about aliens defending against human invaders.
Alpha, go!
But it was their next title that really helped to put them on the map. A game that would not only spawn a massive decade-spanning franchise, but also redefine the tactical first-person shooter forever. Using a custom Quake modification, Red Storm toyed around with ideas for a more authentic FPS experience, including more limited movement and real-life weaponry. But the most interesting, and at the time unusual gameplay mechanic that they incorporated was the one-shot kill. A simple tweak that immediately changed the entire feel of the shooter action. Recognizing its potential, the studio then constructed their own system architecture and crafted complex environments and unique...
That's the first R6 map ever made. That is the first R6 map ever made.
...of the shooter action. Recognizing its potential, the studio then constructed their own system architecture and crafted complex environments and unique player interactions, all based around potential real-life scenarios. A lot of their ideas stemmed from the real-life US hostage rescue team, but seeing how this would limit the game's scope, they invented a new fictional team of international operatives instead, and gave the project the working name Black Ops. Clancy, intrigued by this new project, suggested that the title be renamed. He sat down with Red Storm's CEO, Doug Littlejohn, and the two eventually landed on the name Rainbow Six.
Hold on. What was that guy's last name? Doug what? I'm sorry, this is unrelated.
Intrigued by this new project, suggested that the title be renamed. He sat down with Red Storm's CEO Doug Littlejohn, and the two eventually landed on the name Rainbow Six.
That's how it
with
started!
Rainbow being derived from the
Littlejohn!
South African Rainbow Nation of 1994, and the number 6 being the numeric ranking for a U.S. naval captain. The name stuck, and Clancy encouraged Red Storm to adopt the title to coincide with his upcoming book release.
What?
Meanwhile, the rookie developers at Red Storm encountered several hurdles throughout the course of the game's development. Unlike most games made around the time, the developers didn't go based off of any sort of design documentation or outline to keep their process organized, but instead had multiple artists create levels for several weeks at a time, while the programmers ironed out the complex artificial intelligence. This resulted in a painfully tedious process, one that lead designer Brian Upton admits was a logistic nightmare. But the team remained committed to deliver what they felt would offer a revolutionary experience.
What the fuck is that? He just triple flashed his own team. We're in bronze. What is that?
One that lead designer
Y'all
Brian
see that?
Upton admits was a logistic nightmare.
What the
but
hell?
the team remained committed to deliver what they felt would offer a revolutionary experience.
What the fuck?
Red Storm, now anxious to show their project to the world, wrestled together a rough demonstration of the game for the Electronic Entertainment Expo in 1998,
Bro, this is
and
sick.
were overwhelmed by the response that they received. Word about the game's unique shooter formula spread like wildfire on
The
the show
90s.
floor, prompting attendees to make repeat visits to their booth. Now recognizing just how popular this title was set to become,
Hold on. This watch guard on the left is in copper. He watched
shooter formula spread like wildfire on the
watched
show
both
floor,
of them get
prompting
headshotted. That
attendees to make repeat visits to their booth. Now recognizing just how popular this title was set to become, the pressure to deliver a quality experience mounted. The team spent the final months perfecting the game's complex
Wow.
AI and planning phase system, while also throwing together a rough narrative to help add in some cohesion. And finally, in August of 1998, Red Storm Entertainment released Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, exclusively for the PC platform, with additional console and Mac ports created by third-party studios a year later.
That's got name.
The first Rainbow Six takes place in the late 90s with a deadly eco-terrorist organization referred to as Phoenix, launching seemingly random attacks around the world. In response, the newly established team of multinational operatives, Team Rainbow, are deployed to help deal with each threat, pacifying groups of terrorists, rescuing hostages, and disarming deadly explosives. But after successfully thwarting all of Phoenix's attacks, it becomes apparent that the attacks were actually a coordinated effort, operating under direct orders from a supposed ally, the Horizon Corporation, who plan on wiping out a massive portion of the human population using a deadly bioweapon during the 2000 Olympics. It's an ambitious plot, and one that shares a lot in common with the book of the same name, and its realistic sensibilities.
Was that guy just hitting the baby?
A deadly bioweapon during the 2000 Olympics. It's an ambitious plot, and one that shares a lot in common with the book of the same name, and its realistic sensibilities, along with its emphasis on highly skilled operatives thwarting international terrorism, would go on to define the general narrative structure of every game under the Clancy banner from then on out.
Contact. Got him.
As for the gameplay, Rainbow Six offers a uniquely tactical shooter experience, unlike anything that was available at the time.
Clear.
Each mission is split into two parts, a planning phase and an action phase. In the planning phase, players are given an extensive briefing of the upcoming mission, with lots of info about the targets, the location, and other relevant intel. Once players feel that they've learned enough, they can then progress to the roster selection menu, where they hand-select individual operatives to use throughout the course of the mission. Each operative has their own name, stats, and specialties, and selecting a healthy balance of different skill sets can greatly improve the team's effectiveness for things like room clearing or breaching sealed entrances.
Wait, why did they get rid of this? This is sick. Why would they get rid of this?
Their own name, stats, and specialties.
Look at this!
And selecting a healthy balance of different skill sets can greatly improve the team's effectiveness for things like room clearing or breaching sealed entrances. The next tab is the kit selection window, where the weapons, armor, and tools can be customized to suit the player's preference. There's only a handful of weapons available, mainly M16s and MP5s, though there's a few variants for each, along with a few gadgets like grenades, flashbangs, breaching charges, lockpicking kits, and heartbeat sensors, the latter of which was actually suggested by Tom Clancy himself.
Are you shit? Pulse was an operator in 1997. Listen to what he just said.
Along with a few gadgets like grenades, flashbangs, breaching charges, lockpicking kits, and heartbeat sensors.
Guardian.
The latter of which was actually suggested by Tom Clancy himself. After setting up the roster's gear, operatives can then be sorted into individual teams, with 4 slots available per team.
Bro.
But with only a maximum of 8 total allies per mission, players are forced to split up these teams based on their personal preference. Some missions, for example, offer a lot of entrances, and are better suited for multiple simultaneous breaches with squads of 2.
Good aim!
While other missions are more straightforward and linear, and 2 squads of 4 are recommended to help deal with multiple threats within a single area. This becomes especially important with the next tab, the planning screen. This is probably where players will spend most of their time in the original Rainbow Six. Using the chosen team configuration, players now need to draw out specific directions for each individual team lead.
Bro, why would they get rid of this? In the prep phase, you could draw up plans?
Lines drawn indicate movement, while nodes or waypoints indicate new orders. Players can tweak a lot of the settings for each of their waypoints depending on how they want the AI to behave. Teams can be set to move slow and cautious, or fast and reckless, both of which have their uses depending on the situation.
Why does every hostage hit the debate?
Mainly for doorways, where team members will set up breaching charges or prep grenades to help clear out rooms. To time these actions more precisely, go codes can be assigned for any waypoint, which requires the player's input to initiate the following action. This mechanic allows players to pull off perfectly coordinated attacks, and when done properly, they are some of the most satisfying moments throughout the series, especially if the player is responsible for the custom plan. The planning phase can certainly be overwhelming, especially for players looking to just jump straight into the action. So Red Storm did include pre-built plans to utilize, most of which offer a reliable set of waypoints to follow. Though nothing really compares to setting up your own personal plan and carefully fine-tuning it until you can storm through the map flawlessly with minimal casualties. In the action phase, players control one team leader directly, while the other teams follow through on their respective plans. The game is played primarily in first person, with a red crosshair appearing in the center of the screen and a detailed toolbar providing critical mission info like each team's status, a mini-map with plans drawn out on them, and basic weapon information. But it's the combat where Rainbow Six really makes a name for itself. Bullets in this game are lethal, with single short bursts being more than enough to put down anyone for good. And this is hugely important, as these terrorists, even on the easiest difficulty, really don't mess around. The reaction time is incredibly fast, giving players only a split second to respond. This, combined with the weapon accuracy that fluctuates wildly with any sort of rapid movement, requires players to move at a much slower pace, and engage enemies in the safest possible way. Flanking enemies will grant valuable extra time to line up lethal headshots, and use of tools like flashbangs and heartbeat sensors are critical, especially when trying to prevent civilian casualties.
Tango down!
There are 16 campaign missions to complete, each with unique layouts and scenarios, combined with randomized guard placement and objectives. The maps typically consist of small, 2-story residential or office buildings, with lots of different entry points to make use of, and players should carefully review blueprints of the accessible structures along with estimated objective placements to plan their approach and minimize any hazardous encounters. The objectives include eliminating all of the terrorists on the map, defusing bombs, and rescuing groups of hostages.
Escorting hostage.
Though there are a few missions towards the end that require the player to go in solo, and sneak around without being detected. These stealth operations are probably some of the more annoying missions in the game, with instant fail parameters when being detected, and no authorization to use lethal force, though they at least add a bit of variety to the experience.
That's how you planted the diffuser in 1997? Rewind. Playback! That's how you planted
missions
the diffuser?
In the game, with instant fail parameters when being detected, and no authorization to use lethal force, though they at least add a bit of variety to the experience. And then, of course, there's the game's online multiplayer, that played a critical role in redefining the competitive FPS space, with one of the earliest tactical shooter PvP experiences in the industry.
Wow.
The game's multiplayer options allow for both full cooperative play of the main campaign, along with a competitive PvP mode, that pits two teams against each other in objective-based deathmatches that take place in repurposed campaign environments. The game modes include various forms of deathmatches and objective-based scenarios, like rescuing a group of AI-controlled hostages, which helped to set it apart from other late 90s online shooter games.
Bro.
The fans quickly erected privately owned competitive leagues that have since blossomed into the growing esports experiences available today. Though Rainbow Six's influence on online competitive gaming is so extensive, I think I'll save that for its own standalone video in the future. By the end of 1998, Rainbow Six had greatly exceeded sales expectations. It was a massive hit, and is recognized today for popularizing many aspects of tactical shooter games that we take for granted. Things like permadeath, one-shot kills, and limited ammunition are all concepts that became commonplace after this game, and Red Storm Entertainment had firmly placed themselves into a new niche market that would only continue to grow from there on out. Following the initial PC and eventual Mac release, Red Storm reached out to a couple of third-party studios to bring their experience to the emerging console space, including the Sega Dreamcast, the Nintendo 64, and the Sony PlayStation. And while the two former systems came close to emulating the beloved PC version, the PlayStation version wasn't quite on the same level. The planning phase was stripped away, and instead there's only 3 controllable operatives in each mission, turning each level into a mess of trial and error. The only upside to this version is that it's the first entry in the series to feature a rendered first-person gun model. But despite this misstep, the series was still growing steadily in popularity, with many newcomers discovering the tactical subgenre that would eventually consume the market today. Meanwhile, in early 1999, Red Storm released their first expansion pack for the original PC version.
Oh my god, it's Skyscraper! Oh my god, it's the early files of Skyscraper! Look!
The newcomers discovering the tactical subgenre that would eventually consume the market today. Meanwhile, in early 1999, Red Storm released their first expansion pack for the original PC version called Eagle
That
Watch,
is Sky!
which added in 5 more campaign missions to play,
Oh, my
along
mic's
with some new gear and updates to the game's multiplayer modes. Most notably, the first instance of the fan-favorite cooperative terrorist hunt that pits 2 teams of players against each other, along with a third team of AI-controlled terrorists to add to the chaos. Like the main game, this content was well received, but it was merely a small taste of what was to come later that same year.
Oh shit. 55 seconds!
Spicebone Dark Leather by Victor and Rolf.
55-second ad. Are you shitting me?
It's not about the fear or the danger or the
What
risk.
just happened?
It's about the love of flying.
Signature seasoning and buttery flavor.
I'm gonna
in every
snap,
twist.
bro. I'm gonna
Duff's
snap.
Sensationally seasoned
It
pretzels.
was just about to tell me.
Sometimes you just need a moment.
Okay, I do have
Self-care
Nature
has never
Made.
been this easy.
Here we are driving down the
What the fuck?
There's a crack in our windshield. You know.
Thank you, God. Whoa, whoa.
Tango's in sight. Fire.
This is when Ubisoft took over the game. Everybody listen. Everybody listen. Shut up, shut up.
Same year.
Tango's in sight. Fire.
With the sequel, Red Storm sought to expand upon what they had already accomplished, with bigger missions, more interesting situations to defuse, and a few tweaks to the feel of the gameplay. But they soon found themselves caught on a short leash, as their strict release window and poorly managed development pipeline made any major changes to their
Oh my god, that's presidential plane in 1997. Yo, this is insane to look at. Look at that, look at that.
gameplay.
Bro,
But they soon found themselves caught on a short leash, as their strict release window and poorly managed development pipeline made any major changes to their formula almost impossible. The same engine architecture was reused, along with many of the same assets like basic controls and mechanics, but they were able to sneak in a few quality of life improvements to strengthen the game's popular multiplayer suite. Red Storm even included features based on feedback from their audience, a collaborative practice that continues to shape elements of the series to this day. And after only a little under a year of development, Red Storm released the second entry to the series, Rainbow Six Rogue Spear. Rogue Spear takes place a few years after the events of the first game, with Team Rainbow now dealing with a group of Russian mobsters supplying deadly weapons and equipment to terrorist organizations around the world. The plot isn't quite as ambitious as the original game, but it retains a lot of similar elements, and it does ramp up in intensity towards the end when the antagonists threaten to trigger a nuclear meltdown at a power plant. From a gameplay perspective, Rogue Spear serves to fortify the already solid tactical shooter gameplay design introduced previously. The format of the well-received planning and action phase system remains intact, though there are a few minor tweaks here and there. For example, team waypoints during the action phase now appear in the minimap with their own color, rather than all of the different team waypoints appearing as the same color like before. Players can also crouch and move at the same time, and even lean out from around corners, minimizing exposure to enemy gunfire a significant amount. Rogue Spear also features a large increase to the number of available weapons, including the AUG, the L85A1, and even powerful bolt-action sniper rifles that can be assigned to the new sniper class to neutralize long-distance targets when given the order. To account for new mechanics like this, the levels in Rogue Spear are also much more expansive and varied. The locations range from docks, TV stations, and oil tankers, to even more interesting locales like a hijacked 747 on a runway, an opera house, a museum, and an old castle.
Wow.
Fans of Rainbow Six Siege may even notice some interesting similarities with some of these locations, especially the chalet, that serves as the inspiration for the map of the same name in the series' most recent release. But it was Rogue Spear's multiplayer that really helped to drive the series forward. Not only does it include all of the modes from the first game and its Eagle Watch expansion, but it also includes the first truly cooperative terrorist hunt mode, where a team of human players face off against the AI in any of the available environments, without any specific objectives to worry about. This cooperative experience has since become synonymous with the Rainbow Six franchise, and has been featured in almost every single Rainbow Six game since. But the competitive modes still remain the biggest selling point for PC gamers.
Wow, you could lean!
As the online competitive atmosphere only further intensified, with fierce skirmishes on fan-favorite maps like Bunker, The Net, and Trainyard. This old-school multiplayer offered large-scale 16-player objective-based deathmatches, and included many of the improvements from the single-player. Once again, Red Storm had delivered, as Rogue Spear was widely praised across the industry. The game scored highly among critics, garnering scores in the upper 80s. Though many did take note of the game's lack of innovation and new features.
Yeah.
Sure, you could lean and shoot sniper rifles now, but it was still more of the same, and its visuals were quickly falling behind the competition. Following Rogue Spear's release, Red Storm, along with a few other third-party developers, created several ports and expansion packs. The first expansion is called...
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what did they do to, like, bring the game to the next level? Because right now, like, the game looks good, but it's just, like, kind of...
Urban Operations, and adds in 8 new missions to play, along with a few legacy missions from the first game. But Urban Operations is probably best known for its inclusion of a new mod management system, allowing for user-generated content to be more easily loaded into the game. This was a major deal back then, as it helped to greatly strengthen the online community surrounding it, and is a strong reason for why the community today still remains active. Several months later, the second expansion, Rainbow Six Covert Ops, released, adding with it 3 more missions, along with a collection of 6 multiplayer maps. Unlike Urban Ops, Covert Ops was not intended to be an expansion pack. Instead, it started development as an actual training simulator pitch for law enforcement. But because of a severe lack in funding, it was ultimately released as a standalone expansion instead.
Threat neutralized.
These expansions, alongside continued positive sales numbers for both Rogue Spear and the original Rainbow Six, eventually caught the interest of the up-and-coming French publisher Ubisoft, who then offered to purchase Red Storm, along with the rights to publish games under the Tom Clancy banner.
Yes!
This proved to be a major step for
Here
not just Ubisoft and Red Storm, but for the Rainbow Six series. That could be properly improved upon thanks to the additional funding offered by this new acquisition. But before that could happen, Red Storm was already hard at work on a brand new IP, one that would take their tactical shooting formula out into wide open spaces.
Cafe!
Ghost Recon, as I mentioned in my documentary last year...
Okay, this was like their blow-up game, I heard. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon was like the game that fucking put them on the map, is what I heard.
...was hugely successful for Red Storm. It helped to cement the studio as the undisputed champions of tactical shooter gameplay, and allowed the developers to attempt much larger scale operations.
Wow.
And along with it, more exciting action-based gameplay. A lot of the same aspects from Rainbow Six are incorporated in these early titles, including one-shot kills and permadeath.
Yep.
But there were also some nice changes, like more impressive graphics, controls, and most importantly, a way to directly control squad movement in real time, using a planning screen implemented directly into the action phase. Lessons learned from the Ghost Recon series would significantly influence steps taken with the Rainbow Six series moving forward, creating a long-lasting bond between the two franchises that still exists to this day. As we move into the early 2000s, the history of Rainbow Six gets a little bit messy, with the Ubisoft acquisition, the new Ghost Recon property being introduced, and various expansions and ports. It seemed Tom Clancy games were just being thrown all over the place, greatly confusing the market and discouraging newcomers from jumping on board. Rogue Spear received a third expansion, titled Blackthorn, that again added to the robust list of weapons, missions, and multiplayer maps. And South Korean gamers even received a special exclusive title called Rainbow Six Takedown, which, along with previous content, offered a series of special Korean-based operations, along with unique operatives, weaponry, and multiplayer content. Console ports also continued to be released, though shared about the same fate as the previous title. The Dreamcast version was mostly the same as the PC version, albeit with incredibly convoluted menu controls to account for the lack of button inputs.
Bro, guys, I'm not even going to lie. It's kind of just like, from what I'm seeing, from 1997 to 2001, it's basically the exact same game.
And the PlayStation
When does Ubisoft step in and save the fucking day? When?
Version once again failed to really deliver the same.
Rainbow Six Lone Wolf, Lone Wolf, Lone Wolf. Development of Rainbow Six 3. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. Development of Rainbow Six 3.
Make some noise for
What the fuck?
It's now for Piece by Piece with the greatest lineup ever assembled.
Oh my god!
Oh, wow, wow. Hell yeah. Piece by Piece, rated PG.
I'm about to crash, bro. Like, I don't want to watch the ads.
Buy your next favorite outfit on Depop.
I don't want to watch this, bro.
Buy tanks and tops. Sell sweaters and sneakers. Buy this year's vacation outfit.
Next.
Leaves are
My
falling,
God.
and so are the prices. With
Fuck Hobby Lobby.
Decor from Hobby Lobby.
Fuck. The rise of console.
After the Ubisoft acquisition and the successful launch of the new Ghost Recon series, the tactical shooter genre experienced a massive boom throughout the industry. Rainbow's gritty realism offered a completely new take on the genre, one without the fast-paced rocket jumping and strafing that had long been associated with FPS games. And other developers in the industry took notice as well, inspiring them to create their own realistic military-themed experiences, with a lot of the same rules and concepts. One-shot kills, the need to reload weapons, and an emphasis on team play all quickly became common aspects of the shooter formula, and soon would replace the likes of Doom, Quake, and Duke Nukem in the early 2000s. Replacing them were a large assortment of new IPs, like Conflict Desert Storm, the Delta Force series, Medal of Honor, Call of Duty, and of course, the hugely popular Half-Life mod Counter-Strike. But one of the most striking similarities came with 1999's SWAT 3, that transformed the old Police Quest franchise into something that felt eerily similar to Rainbow Six. Red Storm, aware of this sudden uptick in competition, knew that the only way to keep Rainbow Six on top was to give it a complete overhaul. First, they had to abandon their old graphic engine, opting for a much more advanced Unreal 2 instead.
That looks like
With
console.
this new graphical architecture, they were able to completely redo the game's mechanics, while also modernizing the graphical design. Character models were made up of more polygons, the artificial intelligence was enhanced, and new physics effects were thrown in to make the combat more visceral. They even rendered full 3D gun models, as it was now an expected industry norm.
Good rhyme!
But an even greater focus for the studio was on the improvements to the multiplayer, an asset that both Red Storm and Ubisoft agreed was hugely important to the success of the series, and would ultimately become one of Xbox Live's first hugely popular online shooter experiences. Finally, after about 4 years of development, Ubisoft and Red Storm Entertainment released the fan favorite Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six 3 Raven Shield, exclusively for the PC, with a separate console version that I'll talk about more in a bit. Raven Shield's story takes place in 2005, with Team Rainbow responding to several international terrorist attacks once again. Only this time, it's being perpetrated by a group of Nazi sympathizers from Croatia, threatening to utilize chemical weapons in South America.
No!
The game's story is built very similarly to the original two titles, with most of the info being delivered via the director of Rainbow, John Clark, during a briefing sequence at the start of each level. During the missions themselves, the focus continues to be primarily on the action, though there are a few unique dialogue sequences at insertion points.
Wait, Ubisoft! No, I'm gonna crash out! I'm gonna crash out! Ubisoft, make this a map right now. Make this a map right now. This is beautiful. Make this a map right now.
Briefing sequence at the start of each level.
This is beautiful!
During the missions themselves, the focus continues to be
this map,
primarily on the action, though there are a few unique dialogue sequences at insertion points now, along with a few new FMVs that play when successfully completing levels, providing a little more insight into the consequences of Team Rainbow's intervention.
Thank you.
But the tactical action is still at the core of what makes this series special, and Raven Shield delivers this in spades.
Hostile down.
The format is very much the same as the...
Did she grab his penis right there? What the fuck?
But the tactical action is still at the core of what makes this series special, and Raven Shield delivers this in spades.
Good rhyme!
The format is very much the same as the original games. There's a prep phase, where you select your team, gear, and draw out a plan, and the action phase, where you shoot lots of bad guys and save the day. But each one of these elements has been given a huge upgrade, with more functionality than ever before.
Wow, you can prone now. Dad!
Hostile neutralized.
The gear selection screen, for example,
God, I can't wait for Roller Prime!
not only lets players change their armor, weapons, and equipment, but also allows them to equip attachments to their guns, like a scope, an extended mag, or a suppressor.
This is good.
The planning screen has
They
also
started
been
adding in
reworked,
attachments.
with less visual
Very
clutter
good, very
and
good.
easier to understand tools. Waypoints now show distinct icons to symbolize things like ROE
It's nice
and
to
unit
see the
direction.
game just progress.
And there's even
I
a
like
direct
this.
visual feed for each selected waypoint.
Where the fuck is that
More
today?
information about the game world than the simple flat blueprints from before. This allows for greater planning precision, including an option to directly manipulate the view angle for each waypoint to help guide the AI to target enemies around corners. And this is crucial, because Raven Shield is probably one of the more challenging entries in the series. Enemies are vicious and can spot Team Rainbow from greater distances.
Tango down.
Mission completed.
So, utilizing environmental cover is key to keeping members of the team alive. To account for this, Raven Shield introduces some great new fluid motion controls to peek around corners, and even includes a new prone stance that can be used to stabilize weapons and get the drop on enemies in some circumstances.
Tango down.
The game's weapons have all been reworked to feel more effective and powerful, with tighter bullet spreads and more recoil that more closely resembles their
Whoa, that's the F2. That is the FAMAS.
behavior in real life. One of Raven Shield's best changes, though, is the interactivity with doors.
Hostile down. Tango down.
As silly as it sounds, doors are a major part of Rainbow Six's gameplay, as passing through a door haphazardly can have devastating consequences.
Mission failed. A hostage was killed.
So now, instead of just swinging the door wide open and praying there's nobody on the other side, Raven Shield offers a new option, the door peek.
Hostile neutralized.
That allows players to use the mouse wheel to gradually open the door inch by inch, greatly minimizing the chances of being gunned down.
Could you imagine that
Another major
now?
addition to this game is the contextual team commands that allow players to command their AI teammates during the action phase when the situation calls for it. This means the AI is no
Bro, the thing that's crazy is we are now in 2003, and there's not even a single ability introduced yet.
longer tied entirely to the route set in the planning phase, and can be redirected to move to specific locations,
Move out.
Move out.
regroup,
Reform on me.
or even set to breach rooms using several different available methods.
valve eliminated.
It's not necessarily a perfect substitute for a well-designed plan, but it occasionally is necessary.
Are not these guys idiots? One C4 and you're all dead. Fuck it, one cap can trap and you're all dead. Bro, if they did this bullshit in my lobby, I would C4 the hell out of them, Chad.
Especially when dealing with randomized enemy patrols and objective placement.
Threat down.
Then of course there's the multiplayer, that combines all these great mechanics with a fan-favorite competitive atmosphere. The cooperative mode also makes a return, with the entire campaign available to play online, along with the return of Terrorist Hunt, to add a bit of unpredictability to late-night LAN parties.
Charlie, go! Threat neutral. Threat down.
And thanks to third-party chat clients like Xfire and TeamSpeak, Raven Shield was even more popular on the PC than the past two entries. With a highly active online community and continued growth of user-generated modifications. Raven Shield was ultimately a huge success, with reviewers giving the game high scores for its difficult but rewarding tactical action. But Raven Shield's success was nothing compared to the series' first big break on the console platform. To help promote Microsoft's newest online gaming network for their Xbox console, Ubisoft attached their Montreal studio to create a port of the game, simply titled Rainbow Six 3. This port was created using the Unreal 2 engine as well, though to help save on time, a lot of the techniques and assets incorporated in it were carried over directly from Ubi Montreal's previous project, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, including—
What the fuck is he doing? That might have been the zestiest entry I've ever seen.
Though to help save on time, a lot of the techniques and assets incorporated in it were carried over directly from Ubi Montreal's previous project, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell.
What the hell?
An identical thermal vision effect, similar animation designs, voice actors, and even the impressive dynamic cloth physics. What's even more interesting though is that despite sharing a lot of the same general concepts and ideas, this version of Rainbow Six 3 is almost nothing like its PC counterpart. The story, for example, scraps the idea of Croatian neo-fascists and features a group of radical Islamic terrorists instead. And rather than releasing a nerve gas in Rio de Janeiro, the finale sees Team Rainbow thwarting a chemical attack at Mardi Gras instead. But these are minor tweaks when compared to the gameplay design, which feels far simpler by comparison. To compensate for the bulky gamepad controls, this game makes use of much more forgiving aim assist, along with flatter level designs to reduce the need to aim up and down. The planning phase is also missing, though the contextual squad command system is retained, and is a key part of the game's tactical gameplay. Players can, for example, assign their 3 team members to stack up on a door for a breach, and can even use impromptu go codes that allow for effective simultaneous room breaches.
Hostile down.
It's overall a much simpler, more forgiving experience, made even more evident by the inclusion of a visible health bar rather than the typical heart rate monitor from before. But it proved to be extremely popular among early Xbox console adopters, with many veteran Xbox players recalling Rainbow Six 3 as one of their earliest Xbox Live experiences. And this was a huge deal, as Rainbow Six 3's success on the platform convinced Ubisoft to take console gaming more seriously.
Thank you!
A decision that would inevitably have major consequences to not just future console games, but also their PC counterparts. And with Splinter Cell and Rainbow Six 3 now having—
You're trolling. That's Sam Fisher. In 2003? Zero?
have major consequences to not just future console games, but also their PC counterparts. And with Splinter Cell and Rainbow Six 3 now having introduced console gamers to Clancy's unique techno-thriller atmosphere, Ubisoft had their Montreal studio immediately begin work on a follow-up. Meanwhile, Red Storm continued to support their positively received Raven Shield with a couple of expansion packs. The first expansion, titled Athena Sword, released in early 2004, and included a new campaign, terrorist hunt maps, and multiplayer content. The campaign's missions are surprisingly much larger and more intricate than the environments featured in Raven Shield, with large city streets and fortresses providing some great variety for fans of both the co-op and competitive multiplayer. Athena Sword also included 7 new weapons and a few extra online game modes to choose from. It was received extremely well by the player base and provided countless hours of additional tactical gameplay. But sadly, Athena's Sword also marked the end of an era for the PC community, as it would be the last hardcore tactical experience delivered to them by Red Storm Entertainment, as the studio had begun to turn their attention more heavily towards the console side of things. However, this was not the end of Rainbow Six 3's PC support, as Ubisoft had their Casablanca studio, in collaboration with Red Storm, release one final expansion a year later.
Open and clear. I'm on it.
This expansion, titled Iron Wrath, was originally set to release only a few months after Athena's Sword. But after being delayed several times, the developers decided to just release the content for free via an online download.
Hostile neutralized.
Oh, that's
Iron
nice.
Wrath includes 7 more campaign missions to play
that's nice
through,
of them. That's
along
cool.
with 3 more remakes of classic missions, 5 new weapons, and 5 new online game modes.
Threat down.
Again, this content was well received, bolstering Rainbow Six 3's glowing reputation further.
Bro, could you imagine a YouTube video where I played the first Rainbow Six Siege ever?
But the PC platform success was overshadowed by the continued success of Ubi Montreal's Xbox counterpart, which also received its own standalone expansion titled Rainbow Six 3 Black Arrow.
Contact.
Black Arrow plays identically to Rainbow Six 3 on the Xbox. All the squad controls, movement, and combat remains the same, but like Athena's Sword, it adds in a new campaign, along with several new weapons and some minor improvements to the gameplay. Overall, when considering all the expansions and ports, Rainbow Six 3 was a crowning achievement for the Rainbow Six intellectual property.
Clear.
It stands today as one of the series' defining moments, taking everything that worked from the original 2 titles and improving upon them with a beautiful visual design and some great new gameplay mechanics.
Threat down.
But most importantly, the title success on the Xbox, and to a slightly lesser extent the PS2 and GameCube, brought with it an influx of new fans to the Tom Clancy universe that ultimately would change the design philosophy for both the Rainbow Six series and other related titles for years to come.
Are you ready to own it for that perfect fitting, goal scoring, bring the moves, hit the trail, super crafty kind of day? Every Hydro Flask is designed to perfection and all in for everything. We make it, you own it.
Who are you? Dude, I'm
about to
you.
snap, man. I'm about to snap.
Where do we live? Do we have kids? Are we so happy?
I don't want to tell you too much and ruin the surprises of life. My old ass. Rated R.
STEM Light Trap attracts and traps flying
I'm
insects
about to
24/7.
snap!
And STEM Light Trap is people and...
Lost Florida Medicaid?
Where can we find a low-cost health plan?
I don't know, but I'm watching this! The decline.
In the mid-2000s, game developers across the industry began to gravitate more heavily towards the console market, and with Rainbow Six 3 performing so well on the Xbox, Ubisoft continued to supply the platform with AAA Tom Clancy experiences, including new entries to the Splinter Cell series, an exclusive Ghost Recon sequel, and a 4th mainline entry to the Rainbow Six series titled Rainbow Six Lockdown, created in-house by Red Storm Entertainment. Rainbow Six Lockdown takes place 40 years after the previous game, with Ding Chavez and the rest of Alpha Team tracking down a terrorist organization called the Global Liberation Front, who plan on selling a deadly viral weapon called Legion to other terrorist cells around the world. Much like the design of Rainbow Six 3 and Black Arrow on the Xbox, Lockdown's story is delivered with a slightly more modern sensibility, with cinematic cutscenes combined with flashy briefing animations and some minor dialogue throughout the course of each mission. The gameplay has also been modernized quite a bit. Straightforward level designs, scripted action sequences, and large-scale firefights all make up a bulk of the experience, and classic options like pre-mission planning or swapping between operators are not available, even when playing on the PC. In their place are greatly improved combat controls and contextual squad
Wow, the
commands,
gunfights look better.
both aspects that felt relatively weak before.
Whoa, that's the first ever ping in Rainbow Six Siege history right there. Right there!
Available, even when playing on the PC. In their place are greatly improved combat controls and contextual squad commands, both aspects that
It
felt
looks like
relatively
shit
weak
though,
before.
I'm not gonna lie.
Weapons are now much easier to control, with faster ADS time and more forgiving recoil. And the game's health system, which is still limited to a standard health bar, is much more forgiving, allowing players to take more hits before being killed. Like with the previous Xbox releases, players can only take control of lead character Ding Chavez in the campaign, and participate in a series of semi-linear breach and clear missions, designed to take advantage of the game's dynamic tactical squad commands and its streamlined first-person combat mechanics.
Bro, I wonder if there was aim assist
Enemies are
back
typically
then.
more abundant in this game, with upwards of 4 to 5 in each area, so making effective use of the AI squad members is critical in order to successfully clear the terrorists out. New to Lockdown are additional door breaching methods, including a sledgehammer breach that can knock— effective use of the AI squad members is critical in order to successfully clear the terrorists out.
Origin story.
New to Lockdown are additional door breaching methods, including a sledgehammer breach that can knock down doors quickly,
one-handed that bitch!
and an option to shoot directly at door hinges, toppling the door from a distance. Other new features include a rework to the thermal vision that allows players to see straight through walls, and cleaner UI prompts that make things like squad commands or throwing grenades easier to understand. There's even some unique sniper-based missions when playing the Xbox version of the game that help to add a bit more variety to the campaign. And of course, the game's online multiplayer also returns.
Whoa, who's he telling? That's Stompin'. I literally just found the 2005 Stompin'. Whoever that guy is on the desk, I guarantee you that might be Stompin's dad.
And some
Who's
unique
that?
sniper-based missions when playing the Xbox version of the game that help to add a bit more variety to the campaign. And of course, the game's online multiplayer also returns.
No, that's Stompin's dad! That is that is Stompin's dad, I swear!
But with a new online progression system called Persistent Elite Creation, where progress made in any of the game's modes, either online or offline, would be carried over and used to continuously progress the player's weapon arsenal and unlocks. As far as the combat is concerned, Rainbow Six Lockdown is a marked improvement over its predecessors, as it takes the bulky, weird movements and smooths it all out with a much more modernized control scheme. But this comes at a cost, as Lockdown's more simplistic and casual experience feels like a disservice to fans, craving more of the hardcore tactical planning and execution from the past. Reviewers through almost every outlet criticize the title for abandoning its roots, knocking the game for its almost shooter gallery approach. Everything feels dumbed down to account for the larger audience on the console market. And while Red Storm had initially intended to make the PC release more tactical like its predecessors, they were ultimately forced to sacrifice these features for the sake of meeting their deadlines. Though it wasn't all bad. Since the console version plays almost exactly like the hugely popular Rainbow Six 3 and Black Arrow, the game still managed to generate some solid sales numbers with console gamers, and players were generally content with the improved visuals and more polished combat design. After Lockdown, Red Storm Entertainment was finally done with the Rainbow Six franchise, and turned their attention almost exclusively to the Ghost Recon property instead, especially the next generation leap that would prove to be hugely successful for the series. But convinced that there was still some life left in the Rainbow property, Ubisoft turned to their Quebec studio in hopes that they'd be able to right the ship.
Shout out Quebec, dude. Shout out Quebec. I mean, they saved that shit, bro.
The fifth main installment to the Rainbow Six series was intended to be a return to form for the series, with remakes of fan-favorite missions and less of the bombastic action featured in Lockdown. The development team assumed control of the same Unreal 2 assets Red Storm had used previously to help piece together the experience. And within only a few months of development, Ubisoft Quebec released Rainbow Six Critical Hour, exclusively for the Xbox platform. Critical Hour takes place some time after Lockdown, with John Clark announcing his retirement and planning to hand the reins of Team Rainbow over to longtime series protagonist Ding Chavez. But before he does that, he briefs the recruits to the team on the various exploits that the International Band of Operators have experienced, in the form of several unrelated flashbacks. The story essentially boils down to a clip show or a compilation of greatest hits from the Rogue Spear and original Rainbow Six days. And aside from establishing that Chavez is now the director of the organization, it really doesn't add much to the overarching plot. What it does do, though, is present newcomers to the series a chance to experience some of the most classic Rainbow missions in a not-so-classic way. The gameplay is pretty much the same as the past few Rainbow Six console releases, with an increased focus on action as opposed to carefully thought-out plans and experimentation. There's still no planning phase, teams are limited to only 4 operators, and the tactical squad commands boil down to pointing the AI to a door and having them serve as distractions while you sneak in the back. It's very much the same as Lockdown, Black Arrow, and Rainbow Six 3 in these regards. Critical Hour's biggest feature, though, is the return of 7 classic missions from the original 2 Rainbow games, including
Yo, this is starting to get crazy because, like, the video is, like, 67% done. And I don't even... When do they start adding in the search and destroy, the hostage, the bomb, the secure area, the operators, the abilities? Like, when do they add that?
Including Operation Firewalk, Black Star, Racer Ice, Deep Magic, Aztec Palace, and Infinite 7. What's more, these missions have even been redesigned in order to account for the game's new action-focused direction, with more linear structures, increased enemy density, and a greater emphasis on door breaching.
Let's move! Hostiles eliminated.
But aside from that healthy dose of nostalgia, Critical Hour is another major step back for the series, as it fails to deliver anything of actual value to the once great tactical shooter series. Even its target audience on the Xbox saw a decreased interest, with lower online player numbers and significantly fewer sales.
Dude, it sounds like they were just, like, putting out the exact same game over and over and over again.
The development team to cease plans for a PC port. Critical Hour was a critical disaster.
Tango sighted.
It achieved abysmal scores, averaging around 50% on Metacritic, and currently holds the title for the least popular mainline entry to the Rainbow Six series. And while it certainly was a disappointment, it also is not too surprising either. With Red Storm now focused on a next-gen Ghost Recon, and Ubi Montreal busy with Chaos Theory, Ubisoft always intended Critical Hour to be a sort of gap filler, keeping the Rainbow property relevant while also biding time for one of their bigger studios to tackle a proper follow-up. And with the team at Ubi Montreal wrapping up work on the third Splinter Cell, they were now free to pursue a true next-gen experience.
Whoa!
One that would transform the Rainbow Six series forever.
Here we go.
It's the hardest conversation I have with patients. Telling them that their baby
I was about to see it!
Now, because of Florida's extreme abortion ban, I also have to tell them I can't help. The ban forces women to wait until the brink of death to get care.
I don't know what's
doctors
happening.
like me to prison just for treating my patients.
I don't know
That's terrifying.
I don't know.
And it's why I'm voting yes.
I don't know what's going on right now.
So government can't stop women from getting life-saving
Guys,
care.
I don't know what is happening.
Watch
What
Dora,
in
the
the
new show,
fuck?
weekdays at 11 on Nickelodeon and available now on Paramount Plus.
Clean, effective, all-day deodorant.
You smell amazing.
It's native.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really?
No, I don't know it.
First up, we've got...
I don't care. Come on. Whoa.
In 2005, almost every studio working under the Ubisoft name was acutely focused on the next generation of console gaming, mainly the Xbox 360 and Sony PlayStation 3. And with the game industry having rapidly grown throughout the course of the mid-2000s, the pressure was on for developers to deliver the revolutionary next steps. Ubi Montreal, determined to deliver on their promise, spent the better part of 2005 working with the new Unreal 3 engine architecture, allowing them to incorporate more advanced lighting and post-processing effects in larger and more complex game worlds. One of their biggest focuses, though, was on improving the realism of the game's many character models, especially in how they moved.
Good aim!
But rather than keyframe each animation like they had done in the past, they utilized a motion capture studio to record thousands of unique animations, all lending themselves to much more realistic character behavior. Taking it a step further, Ubisoft wanted to deliver a more meaningful cinematic presentation as well, and opted to limit the single-player campaign's scope to a single city, based around only 3 Rainbow operatives. This more story-oriented approach, combined with some innovative tweaks to the gameplay mechanics, resulted in a drastically different direction for the series. And after a year of full development, Ubi Montreal released Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Vegas, first for the Xbox 360 and PC, and then for the PS3 and PlayStation Portable a year later. Vegas' story is probably one of the more ambitious and cinematic narratives offered in the entirety of the Rainbow Six franchise.
Wow!
The game kicks off with a small-scale counter-terrorism operation near Mexico, with players assuming the role of series newcomer Logan Keller, as they command a 3-man team to neutralize a terrorist cell leader named Irina Morales. But after finally cornering Morales in an old mining tunnel, Logan's team is ambushed, and his teammates Gabriel and Khan both mysteriously disappear. Logan, having failed to capture Morales, is forced to exfiltrate by chopper, and is immediately flown back into the States to deal with a new incident brewing in Las Vegas, Nevada. Here, Logan regroups with a new pair of AI companions, Michael Walter, a British demolitions expert, and Hyung Park, a South Korean electronics and recon specialist. Together, the trio of Rainbow operatives fight their way through the colorful neon-lit strip, taking down terrorists, freeing hostages, and disarming bombs, only to find that the events in Vegas are directly linked to the scrubbed Irina Morales mission in Mexico, leading to an ultimate showdown at the Hoover Dam. When compared to the past games, it's a major step forward in terms of story quality, but the updates made to the gameplay design are even more noteworthy. Rainbow Six Vegas applies 3 core pillars to its general gameplay structure: observation, planning, and assault, all of which are integrated seamlessly into the action.
Wow.
Players no longer need to flip through tedious briefing screens and level blueprints, and are instead encouraged to adapt to their surroundings on the fly, making quick decisions and executing precise takedowns.
Wow!
To pull off this new 3-tiered gameplay design, Ubisoft tweaked several mechanics to improve the flow of the action. The combat design, for example, is now a blend of the traditional first-person shooting with a new cover-based third-person system that seamlessly zooms out the camera to show Logan and the space around him. This design, while certainly not as realistic as past games, greatly improves target acquisition, as players can now safely view approaching enemies around corners and either blind fire or peek out to target them directly. The game's health system has also been redone, abandoning the old finite health bar with health regeneration instead, and friendly AI who are incapacitated in combat now require a revive, rather than just permanently dying like before. The squad order system was also modified a good amount, simplifying the controls to make them more intuitive when playing with a gamepad. Players can still call for their squad to hold, regroup, or move to a designated position, but can also toggle between the rules of engagement again, which unlocks additional options when setting up door breaches. But Vegas doesn't just clean up the old features from the past, it also introduces a few great new mechanics as well, including a snake cam that can be used to peek under doors and tag enemies for the AI to focus on, and of course, the ability to rappel off the side of
Dude, low-key, the snake cam in 2006 was like the first ever drone. Like, look at this. It's literally
great new mechanics as well,
drone.
Including a snake cam that can be used to peek under doors and tag enemies for the AI to focus on, and of course, the ability to rappel off the side of buildings and fast rope through skylights, all of which contribute to a much faster-paced and intense tactical action experience. When playing the game on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, players were also treated with a new online progression system, similar to the one featured in Critical Hour, that gradually unlocks additional weapons and tools for the players to use when playing online or in co-op. Overall, Rainbow Six Vegas was met with an overwhelmingly positive response. Critics praised Ubisoft Montreal for the beautiful visual design, creative use of the environmental space, and engaging multiplayer content. However, it wasn't perfect. Old-school fans of the series still considered Vegas to be a step in the wrong direction, with mindless shooter action and flashy scripted sequences replacing the tactical sandbox approach from before. But despite these concerns, the game still sold exceptionally well, with nearly 2 million units sold within the first year of its release.
Wow!
And considering the game's campaign ended on a major cliffhanger, it came as no surprise when a sequel was announced only a year later. With the sequel, Ubi Montreal opted for a less is more approach, preserving everything people loved from the first Vegas, while also introducing a new campaign, new level environments, and other quality of life improvements. And after a fairly short development period, Ubisoft released Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Vegas 2 for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Windows PC a month later. Vegas 2 begins with a brief flashback sequence at a mountaintop facility in France that expands upon Gabe Nowak's troubled past with Team Rainbow. Then, the story skips ahead to the day before the Las Vegas incident in the first game. Players assume the role of series newcomer Bishop, who serves as the squad leader of returning operators Michael and Hyung prior to Logan meeting them. To avoid treading the same ground as before though, Vegas 2 brings players to more varied locations in and around Vegas, including a convention center, a rec facility, and a few of the older casinos in the city. The story is a bit more convoluted this time around, as it tries its best to build around the already established narrative from the first game.
What's in the canister? It's smoke.
difficulty, and a few of the older casinos in the city. The story is a bit more convoluted this time around, as it tries its best to build around the already established narrative from the first game.
Bro, so what happened? 2008? I mean, how did we get to what we have now?
Though it does at least help to resolve the first game's cliffhanger in a somewhat satisfying way. As far as the gameplay is concerned, Vegas 2 plays almost identically to its predecessor. All the controls, movement, and general mechanics function the same way, making the overall experience come off as more of a standalone expansion than a true sequel. Though the game's bright outdoor environments do offer a stark contrast to the claustrophobic and colorful casino floors featured before. And there's a much greater emphasis on player customization this time around, with different equipable armor sets and more varied weapons helping to mix up the action. Vegas 2 also introduces a new progression system called Aces that awards players new gear based on their particular style of engagement. Long-range kills and headshots, for example, reward players with things like sniper rifles, while using explosives or killing shielded enemies goes towards unlocking more durable armor.
The first ever pussy in Rainbow Six Siege history. That guy right up there. The first ever bitch, right here.
Kills and headshots, for example, reward players with things like sniper rifles.
That man!
Using explosives or
that
killing
man
shielded
right
enemies
there!
goes towards unlocking more durable
that man
armor
right
pieces.
there!
What's more, the system is also tied to the game's co-op and competitive online modes, only further expanding on the game's well-received progression system. Overall, despite its minimalist approach, Rainbow Six Vegas 2 received decent scores across the board, averaging around the same scores as its predecessor. The game was praised for its creative level designs, intense multiplayer, and expanded progression, but was also criticized for not doing much to innovate or expand on the well-established formula. It was also knocked for being much shorter than the previous title, averaging a little under 5 hours for the main campaign. For fans already happy with the direction that the series took with Vegas, Vegas 2 was a nice bonus. But it otherwise still failed to capture the spirit of the old games, and its increased emphasis on storytelling and action would ultimately be its downfall several years later.
Dry skin?
Soothed. Well, yeah, I do.
There's before and then there's Aquaphor.
I need to buy that.
Tropicana refreshers are made with real fruit juice for your real taste buds.
All right, bro, it's not that good.
Boom! Hole in one!
Hey, hot guy, marry me.
Okay, to Men's Warehouse.
Sometimes life can be like this, but with certified pre-owned quality and safety you expect, it can be.
Okay, we got this.
These ads are killing
Launch
me!
your impossible. Lenovo Legion.
They're killing me! Oh!
Following the success of the Vegas duology, the Rainbow Six series, along with many other Tom Clancy properties, experienced an uncharacteristic pause in their development schedule.
Yeah.
Ghost Recon Future Soldier hit a few snags in development, and a new open-world Splinter Cell went quiet for several years before re-emerging as a more traditional cover-based shooter instead. And with the latest console generation in full swing, a bunch of new IP started to dominate the sales charts. Most notably, Activision's Call of Duty Modern Warfare series. That's responsible for influencing hundreds of games to adopt similar designs and concepts. This shift in market interest towards more simple
Let's think here. Call of Duty blows up, right? It's 2008. Rainbow Six Siege has a good history. Call of Duty starts to blow up. Rainbow Six Siege doesn't want to produce any more games. What happens in the next 8 minutes?
FPS games put tactical shooters like Rainbow Six in a weird position, and likely had a major impact on UB Montreal's next big project. For this latest entry, creative lead David Sears wanted to dive deeper into the narrative aspects that they had experimented with in Vegas, only with a much darker, more realistic tone to it. Players would not just save the day as Team Rainbow, but would also be able to experience the point of view of both the terrorists and their victims, sparking a fair amount of controversy after its announcement. But it wasn't just the story that Ubisoft wanted to improve on. They also spent a great deal of time updating their visual design, finally abandoning the Unreal Engine and using their in-house Anvil Next engine instead. This allowed the team to incorporate even more advanced animation layering, along with specific animations that would play when bullets impacted different limbs. But there were also a few Vegas-oriented tropes planned as well. The third-person camera view when rappelling and taking cover was set to make a comeback. And a new sci-fi 3D spotting mechanic would have allowed players to keep track of enemies through walls, similar to how it functions in the more futuristic Ghost Recon games. Finally, in late 2011, Ubisoft formally announced the project with a brief pre-rendered concept demo, showcasing the dual storylines and an intense firefight along the Brooklyn Bridge. The game, given the working title Rainbow Six Patriots, was set to release for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 platforms in 2013. But only a few months after its reveal, news of the game's troubled development began to surface. Creative director David Sears, along with many other senior-level developers, were cut from the project. Then, both Red Storm and Ubi Toronto were reassigned to other projects, and the game's target release date had come and gone as if the game had never existed. Months passed, then years, with more bad news regarding the project cropping up from various news outlets. Though Ubisoft continued to reassure fans that Rainbow Six Patriots was still actively in development. Behind the scenes, though, the development team struggled to keep up with the game's ambitious scope. As the industry continued to evolve around them, their dated concepts and designs became increasingly more apparent, and they were ultimately faced with a critical decision. Either press on with a game that they were tired of making, or start over with something that played more to the series' strengths.
Over here, now!
No, don't do this! No, what did you do? What I had to do.
In 2013, Ubisoft dissolved the Patriots team, leaving only a small skeleton crew of 25 behind to try and come up with a way to salvage the remains. They took a step back, analyzed the series' history up to that point, and identified that the series was at its absolute best when the focus was on tactics, tension, and teamwork. They then incorporated an experimental physics-based destruction engine that they felt added a unique twist to their tactical shooter formula. Finally, after years of uncertainty surrounding the IP, Ubisoft surprised audiences at E3 2014 with an alpha demo of their new Rainbow Six title. The demo showed a tense 5v5 competitive multiplayer match, with a group of attackers breaching a small suburban house to rescue a hostage. Many elements from past Rainbow games had seemingly returned, including a pre-mission planning phase and the ability to rappel. But the most notable feature showcased was the revolutionary destruction physics that turned a relatively simple level environment into a fully dynamic sandbox. The response was hugely positive, granting the new development team a sigh of relief. And after a year of additional development, Ubisoft released Rainbow Six Siege for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. Rainbow Six Siege doesn't offer a traditional
and then I pulled out my penis.
single-player or co-op campaign to play through,
Rainbow
and instead focuses
Six
almost
Siege.
exclusively on its online competitive atmosphere, where players control unique Rainbow Six operatives on either side and battle it out using advanced weapons and gadgetry. Though there is a bit of a narrative woven into the game's tutorial section, with a group of terrorists called the White Mask occupying several locations around the world, and ultimately attacking a college campus with a deadly chemical weapon.
Bro, I'm like...
But even so, Siege at its core is a multiplayer game, and offers one of the most tense and engaging competitive experiences in the series' history.
Oh my god! Holy
In its most basic form, Siege's multiplayer is a simple game of attack and defend. One team tries to breach a location, while the other team tries to fend them off. However, there is a unique asymmetrical twist to this design that enhances the game's long-lasting appeal.
Nice job. Friendly's victorious. Hostiles eliminated.
Teams are composed of 5 players on each side, with no health regen or respawns available. This requires players to work in close collaboration with each other, optimizing their respective gear to best the opposing team. At the start of each round, players select one of the many available operators, each offering their own set of weapons and signature abilities. These abilities range from simple breaching tools like a sledgehammer or explosive thermite charge, to more unusual devices, like a one-way reinforced window or a holographic decoy. After each player selects an operator, the preparation phase can begin. In this phase, the attacker team is limited to only remote-controlled drones that can drive underneath any doorway and spy on the defensive team. Meanwhile, the defenders need to use this time to prepare their fortifications, either by reinforcing vulnerable surfaces or setting up their various traps to keep the attackers at bay. Once the prep phase is complete, the action phase begins, giving the attacker team roughly 3 minutes to coordinate with their team's abilities and complete their objective. This group dynamic is at the center of what makes Siege so endearing, as opposing team configurations can make or break a team's chance at success. A team composed primarily of riot shields, for example, may seem like a good way to avoid incoming gunfire. But if a defensive team sets enough traps up and utilizes lots of explosives, the phalanx will fall apart quickly.
Bro!
4 remaining.
Why didn't this guy talk more about how they built operators to begin with? Like, they literally released the same game for 9 years, basically, with no operators, and then this guy just, he like didn't even talk about the operators.
Likewise, a group of defenders built to roam across the level environment and peek outside of windows may be harmful to an unaware attacking group.
And bro, if you just look at this game, it's so much better than the last,
for
like,
more
10
sneaky
games.
attackers to take advantage of. But what really sets Siege apart from other hero-based shooters available today is that even with a weak selection of operators, a skilled team can still outperform their opponents using more effective tactics and skilled gunplay.
You have been spotted. Op 4 neutralized. Mission successful.
Siege reverts its general movement and combat mechanics back to its Raven Shield days, with no cover system, third-person camera, or health regen in sight. Players can still sprint and rappel up or down walls, though these too have been tweaked to feel tighter and more efficient. What's more, Siege makes liberal use of its new destructive mechanics to drastically change the feel of every match. A majority of the level environments can be partially destroyed depending on the weapon or device used. An assault rifle, for example, can pepper walls with bullet holes, slowly chipping away at the drywall, while an explosive charge can blow open huge gaps that players can traverse straight through. Not everything is destructible though, as some walls are either blocked by indestructible girders, preventing players from vaulting through them, or are impossible to destroy altogether, helping to provide some more structure to the maps. This heavy emphasis on destruction, coupled with the continuously evolving list of complex operators, continues to redefine the tactical online shooter space, and the game to this day remains one of the most played competitive shooters on the market. What's more, Ubisoft continues to support the title with regular updates, including massive balance changes.
They better, damn right! They better the fuck!
Even map redesigns, ensuring that the game remains as competitive as possible. At first, Rainbow Six Siege was met with a slightly mixed reception. The game's release saw a number of technical issues, including low tick rate servers, gameplay balancing problems, and various other bugs. But with constant support of Siege's live service model, the game has steadily evolved into one of the most popular entries in the entire franchise, and will likely serve as the foundation for several other multiplayer-focused Clancy games for years to come. With Siege's success, Ubisoft began to experiment with other concepts for their popular shooter game by means of special timed events, offering experimental game modes for a limited time.
Bro, what happened to limited time events? Bro, the last limited time event I remember was Christmas of last year. Bro, bring these back. These used to be so sick.
These modes generally offer basic rule changes and cosmetic alterations, but one mode in particular offered something very different to the traditional formula. Likely inspired by the popular Call of Duty Zombies experience, Ubisoft Montreal had begun experimenting with concepts for a new cooperative campaign, utilizing Siege's core gameplay design with new AI-controlled enemies, mutated by a mysterious alien virus. This mode played a lot like the cooperative shooter game Left 4 Dead, with linear level designs and objectives forcing players to traverse through zombie-filled corridors and face off against a number of different deadly threats. The mode released as part of Siege's first Year 3 expansion, Operation Chimera, and was given the name Outbreak. Though, due to memory limitations of the hardware, Ubisoft only offered the mode for a brief 4-week period. Then, only a year after the mode released, Ubisoft showed a teaser for an entirely new Rainbow Six game during their E3 showcase, titled Rainbow Six Quarantine. Not much is known about Quarantine, other than the fact that it too is a 3-player cooperative campaign experience and seems to feature similar horror tones. Though, from the trailer, it appears that operators from Siege like Ella and Vigil will return in some capacity, though it's unclear exactly how they will function in this style of game. This latest project, that was initially set to release in 2020, has since been delayed, and information regarding its development has been noticeably quiet. similar to the Rainbow Six Patriots days. Though, considering its name choice and the current state of affairs, it seems likely that the project has been pushed aside for the time being. The Rainbow Six series is easily one of the most influential tactical shooter games that has ever been created. Red Storm's early efforts with the franchise have forever transformed the industry, spawning countless other shooter franchises to adopt similar gameplay mechanics and ideas. What's even more remarkable, though, is that Rainbow Six mostly maintained its status in the industry throughout the course of its 22-year lifespan. Sure, there were a few duds here and there, with some entries drifting too far from the series' core tenets. But thanks to the talented team at Ubisoft Montreal, the series has managed to reclaim its spot as a premier tactical experience, and one that is enjoyed by hundreds of thousands of gamers at this—
Bro, this video makes me want to crash out, though. Like, yo, Nick930, dude, you spent 56 goddamn minutes showing me old-ass footage. Bro, you spent no time on actual Siege? You didn't explain how the operators were formulated? You didn't explain how the maps were formulated? I'm mad. This video disappointed me. I don't like this video.